I want to welcome everybody to day one of the Artwork Living 5-Day Painting Challenge, where we're going to work on overcoming our fear of failure, learning to paint faster, more consistently, and in flow. The way that you paint without fear is by letting go of the idea that every painting that you produce must be perfect. Once you do that, then you can begin to climb away from that notion and into the idea that every time you pick up a brush, every time you pick up a painting knife, it's just one more day's experiment. It might work, it might not, but it doesn't have to be totally precious. When you let go of the preciousness of the painting, you become so much more free in the way that you. How do you get to that point? The way, my friend, that you do that is by tapping into the power of forming a daily painting habit. During the challenge, we are painting 5 days, every day for 5 days. Don't sneak and try to paint 5 paintings in one day and then just release them every day. You won't get any benefit from doing that. In fact, it'll hurt you in the long run. The benefit comes from painting every single day, even just for a little tiny bit of time. How do I know that? Because I've been right there myself. Almost 10 years ago now, I was stuck. I was in a full-time job, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to paint. I was doing more admin. I didn't have big blocks of time to paint in that I was used to having. When you don't have a big block and you're used to having a 4-hour span, it feels like you can't get anything done if you've only got an hour and a half. Anybody ever felt like that? Raise your hand and tap yes if you have. I don't think I'm the only one that's ever felt that way. One of the ways that I got through that was to realize that if I painted a little bit every day, I wouldn't feel so frustrated. I would be able to get something done. Even if it wasn't a great big huge painting, I would be able to get something done towards my painting practice. The time that I had to paint was in the evening. Terrible light, not great conditions. I was tired, but I decided to go for it. So I painted in the evening on top of my washing machine, and I did it for 3 months straight. I did a 90-day painting project, and I didn't overstress about what I was going to paint. I painted what I saw every day and worked from photographs. Get over this idea of having to have the perfect subject before you can possibly start to paint. Just paint. What happened to me in the process of painting a day for 90 days was A, I got out of my funk. B, I realized that it didn't matter if a third of those paintings were god-awful. They weren't, but fully 10% of them were not real good. Painting every day, I was able to let go of that need for perfection, because perfection leads to procrastination, which leads to fear of painting, which leads to not picking up the brush or the knife. Don't do that to yourself. I want you to pick the knife up or the brush and go for it. Just paint. That's our goal during the 5-day challenge. And yes, we're going to use a timer, because not that you only can paint faster and that's going to be the better thing. Painting faster is not the only goal there. It's to let go of the need to spend hours and hours and hours on it. It's to learn to paint in flow. And having a timer forces your brain, your monkey mind, to let go and allows you to just get started. Here's how that works if you haven't read the directions already. It's really super simple. Set a timer. It could be on your phone, could be on your watch, on the computer, whatever. Or just watch the clock if that's what you want to do. And set it ideally for 20 minutes. But if you want to start out setting it for 40 or 45 minutes, that's okay. Nobody's going to look and scold you if you paint for a little bit longer. But don't go over about 45 minutes, because as soon as you go longer than that, you're going to get into the little grubby details and your monkey mind is going to start chattering at you. And I want it to hush, to shut down and allow you to just paint. Flow happens when the mind lets go. Flow happens when you've created the habit of painting rather than having to think about painting. So set that timer. The timer is only for the actual painting time. Here's my trick for being able to paint that quickly is I have all my compositions worked out already. I've got a folder on my computer because, yeah, I'm doing it too. I'm doing the challenge too. I have a folder on my computer with my cropped photographs already done. They're ready to go. I've got my panels already prepped. They're already on the foam core board, ready to work on. I've got my paint mixed for the first day because I'm a big advocate of mixing your color ahead. When you mix your color ahead, you have a chance to look at the palette and go, that looks like ugh. Because if it looks like ugh on the palette, then it's not going to look any better on your painting. You can adjust without overthinking it. So if you mix your color ahead, you have a chance to make those corrections before you start painting. If you're making those kind of decisions while you're painting, then it's a pattern interrupt. Monkey mind's chattering, and it interrupts flow. So make all the decisions that you could possibly need to make before you pick up the brush or the knife, and you'll be able to paint so much more intuitively, so much more in flow. That's my sneaky little trick for getting that done. You want to get all set up. Make it easy to get started. When we're talking about the painting habit, we're going to talk about what forms that habit and some of the keys that can set you up for success. The first thing, and my students know, I love sticky notes. So y'all going to see a lot of sticky notes this week. The first thing that is really important, know thy why. Know why you want to do this. Everybody's going to have a different reason. I'm going to strongly recommend that if you're participating in the challenge, that you share your why for the week over in the Facebook group, because there is a lot of built-in accountability when you share the reason behind why you're doing what you're doing with people who are empathetic, who are in the same basic boat and moving towards the same basic goals. Think about what it is that you're hoping to get from the challenge. What are you hoping to accomplish? Know your why. That's the first major step in forming any new habit, whether it's about painting or about exercising or any of those other important areas in your life. It doesn't have to be enormous, earth-shattering, and changing the world. It just needs to change you. Make it something that you actually know you can get done, but it's a little bit of a stretch. So that's number one, is set your goal and know your why. And then make it really easy to get started. Here's what I mean by that. Remember I said that I mix my paint ahead of time? That makes it easy to get started in painting because I've already made those choices and decisions. I've figured out what the overall palette, the color scheme is going to be, and I'm not going to be interrupting my flow while I'm painting to do that. So make it easy to get started. Get all your materials together. Make sure you've got the paint tubes that you need, that you have your brushes, you have your knife. Go find that favorite knife if you don't know where it is. The other thing that I've suggested in the welcome email that went out for the challenge is, get yourself an accountability partner. Get yourself somebody who's going to say, hey, did you do what you said you were going to do? Get somebody who's going to hold your feet to the fire. That's number one. Step number two in forming the habit is to establish a cue. We're going to go through each of these steps individually on the different days, but I want to go over the whole pattern first. When you establish a cue, it means that you're creating a pattern inside your brain. If this happens, then I'm going to do that. Another term for a cue is a trigger. It's the fundamental of training, whether you're training dogs, horses, cats. Yes, you can train cats, humans, whatever you're trying to train. We all respond really well to cues and triggers, to positive cues and triggers, not to negative ones. So responding to positive cues and triggers helps us to learn to do new things and get over the fear of taking those first steps. You did this when you were learning how to drive a car. You learned that turning the key in the ignition meant the car was going to start. Putting your foot on the gas pedal meant the car was going to speed up. Putting your foot on the brake meant the car was going to stop. That's a trigger and an action. So we're going to form some of those same things to really cement that painting habit. Because the truth is, lots of us want to be spontaneous. We want to be free form and be able to paint intuitively. That's great. It works better when it's within a framework. So the habit forming is the framework, the box within which we can be free. We're going to create our own box because we get to create it, we get to make it, and we're just going to go over those different steps during the challenge so that you can form it yourself. So, cues are triggers. I told you I was going to say what this was for. This is one of my triggers. I've got a couple of aprons, but I paint with an apron on. I almost can't paint without an apron on, truth be told, because it's so deeply ingrained going back to graduate school and even earlier than that, that I need this in order to pick up that. When I put the apron on, I know it's time for business. If I don't put the apron on, I'm liable not to feel like I'm comfortable in the act of painting. This is one of my cues. Put the apron over my head, tie it around my waist, and I'm ready to go. Whether I'm here in my studio or out on the beach painting or standing on the edge of the marsh, this is one of my major cues. We're going to dive into that more deeply tomorrow about how you can really create some strong cues that will help you step up into that painting habit and make it easy to get started. The next step after the cues is stacking them. So we've got the Y already, and then we've got cues here, and my apron's a cue. So I'm just going to stick this right here. This is my cue. And when you layer cues together, when you stack them one on top of another, that stack, also known as the habit stack, becomes your new routine. So I'm going to give it a double underline. So cues, when you layer them together and you stack them up, become a routine. That's the new habit. And when you repeat it often enough, it becomes ingrained and you don't have to think about it anymore. That is ultimately our goal, that painting becomes such a habit that you won't have to think about it, you'll just go do it. It can happen. It absolutely can. So when I finished that painting project that I told you about earlier, I didn't stop. I kept painting because by that time it was such a habit, it felt odd to not paint every day. And I got way out of the funk that I was in. In fact, I got totally intrigued by the whole process, and it took my painting in a completely different direction than it had been going before. And it really created the entire trajectory for my career after that. So having a routine becomes very freeing. Don't let the fear of a routine get in the way. The routine, and I'm going to give you a lot of different suggestions for how to form that routine, things that you can stack up. You're going to have to figure out what works for you. What are the things that are most appealing to you that are going to make that habit easy to form? It's not something that's going to be the same from one person to the next. So create a standard routine and keep doing it. Now, this next part of the habit system is one that people frequently forget. And it's one I want you to think about now because it's the thing that's going to help propel you forward along with your why. Your why is your desire. It's what you want to have happen, the outcome, the transformation that you want. That why is enough right there to form a reward, but it's going to be even stronger if you can come up with a Circe to give yourself at the end of the challenge that's going to hold your feet to keeping up with the plan. Anybody know what a Circe is? It's a little gift to yourself or from somebody else. It's a Southernism. It's actually a South Carolinianism. I want you to think about a Circe to give yourself at the end of the week that you're going to reward yourself with for participating in the challenge. And don't make it anything huge and big. Make it small, and it's going to work even better if it's in alignment with what we are doing in the challenge. One of the things that I give to myself during challenges, I go and order new paint. I've got me an order sitting there waiting to press the button on for Vasari paint and for more Williamsburg paint, my treat to myself. And I'm going to order it so that it comes in at the end of the week. That's my little gift to myself. It's completely in alignment with my goal. It's going to make my painting habit even stronger. Think about what your Circe is going to be. Make sure it's in alignment with your why and with what you're doing. So rewarding yourself is the fourth part there of that cycle. Then the last step is to track your progress and reflect on it. If you've registered, you've got a copy of the challenge guide. I think it's the last page, there's a tracker there so that you can keep track of your progress through the challenge. Literally going in there and checking off and doing it with a pen when you've completed your daily painting is going to reward your brain. And it will reward it more than if you checked it off on the computer. And here's why. We get a little mini dopamine hit when we cross something off of our to-do list, when we do it manually. When you're tracking your progress, you're actually giving yourself a little mini reward every day. At the very end, you want to look back. This is where that reflection part comes in. Look at what worked really well for you. What didn't work so well for you? It might be a step that you skipped over, or it might be that one of the cues that I suggest forming the stack doesn't work as well for you. You need to figure those things out, assess, and make some changes and tweaks so that you can carry it over into being your new habit and your new process. So as you're forming habits, whether it's painting or anything else, we go through a stage where we know intellectually what we need to do, but we don't have the habit formed yet, and it feels really awkward. Everybody's going to feel that when that timer goes off today and probably tomorrow, maybe even still on Wednesday, because it's new. It's not going to feel comfortable. That's okay. It's the messy middle of the new habit stack. Know that going in. Know that's what everybody goes through when they're creating a new habit. Remember when you learned how to drive the car? How awkward it was when you had to think about putting your foot consciously on the gas pedal, consciously moving it to the brake? And then you get to the point where you don't have to think about it anymore. So that period of having to be conscious of what you're trying to do is the awkward phase. Then comes the phase where you don't have to think about it anymore and you can go onto autopilot. That is flow. That is when you can slip right into flow and paint truly fearlessly. So it will happen. It will not probably happen the very first time you try it that way. Give yourself grace and know that it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to share any of your paintings if you don't want to, but I recommend that you do because it helps with the accountability part. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to be done. Nobody in the group is going to come in and critique your painting unless you want it critiqued. And a painting done for the challenge is at a different point. Think of it more as a study than a finished major work of art. So allow yourself some grace in there. Get in there and go make your painting. Make your post after you do your painting. Remember that done is better than perfect. So happy painting, everybody. I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody's done with their painting, and I'll be sharing mine into the group as well. Bye-bye for now.